part of Kerby Centre's Spring into 2021, week-long series of online presentations by some of Calgary's leading providers of information and services to help you live your best life. Before we begin, as we gather today, it's vital we also remember the peoples who've gathered here for millennia. This is the Treaty 7 land of the Indigenous peoples of Southern Alberta, the Blackfoot nations of 𝗪𝐸𝐶𝐶, 𝗵𝐼𝐾𝐻𝐭ni, 𝐾𝐻𝐭ni, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda nations of 𝗺𝗖𝐾𝐻𝐵, 𝗵𝘱𝗲𝗄, and 𝗺𝘺leigh, and the historic home of the Northwest Métis and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. It is with the goal of reconciliation that we acknowledge the land on which we gather, and we thank the elders of these nations for their timeless contributions to this land. And as I mentioned up front, we have an exciting week planned for you to help you spring into 2021. All week long, we'll present a wide range of topics of interest that will help you maintain a healthy and rewarding lifestyle. And this morning, we feature Next Stage Service. Next Stage Services was launched by Lisa Falkowsky and Zoe Agashae to provide transition management services for seniors and their families to downsize, transfer to support living, or manage estate dispersal. Zoe has been helping people manage change for over 20 years. She has a master's degree in adult education and runs a successful consulting business. In addition, Zoe is a managing partner of Next Stage Services, which helps seniors manage life transitions through downsizing, supportive living, and estate dispersal. Zoe lives in Calgary with her son and 2 thoroughly spoiled cats. Zoe, I think that there's a lot of us at this stage of our lives that are in the process of trying to downsize or get rid of things that our children are not going to want, and making decisions about what we're going to be doing for next stages of our life. So please tell us how your service makes a difference for clients and their loved ones.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Colleen, for that lovely introduction. And thank you to Kerby as well for hosting us today. We're very happy to be here to share some of our thoughts and experiences around transitions and helping people move their homes. So I am going to apologize because my internet connection is very dicey. So I may need to actually I will turn off my camera while I'm speaking to particular slides. And then as we're chatting, I can turn it back on again as we go. So I'm going to begin by doing that and then sharing my screen. All right. So hopefully you can still hear me and you will be able to see my screen now. Does that look okay? Colleen? Oh, I think you're muted, but okay. I think we're good.
Sorry, yes, it looks great, thanks.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you again, and I'm very happy to be here. I do extend a regret, an apology from Lisa. She's busy helping another client, so she couldn't join us today. But I do want to spend just a minute talking about what we do at Next Stage Services. As Colleen mentioned, we provide transition services. So that is helping people move essentially from their current residence to their new destination. And that includes a number of different features, not just finding a mover. It's more detailed by helping people decide what they might want to keep among their possessions, what they might want to donate or sell, or give away to their family or children. And as well, we help them negotiate all the steps that are involved in trying to move their homes. So whether that's moving utilities, deciding on an internet provider, or forwarding their phone or post, we can do all of those things. What we find is that in our own experience, we found that people who were forced to move suddenly, whether it was for personal choice, often it was because of physical or emotional challenges like illness or bereavement. It was a very stressful and trying time for them. And we started the business to help them move in a safe and comfortable and stress-free manner. Relocation can be very stressful, and it in fact has its own syndrome now called relocation stress syndrome. And medical people are quite familiar with this. And so we realized that there is a big gap between moving companies that will move the boxes that you've already packed versus our service, which helps you actually get there in a comfortable manner. So as we begin, I'd love to hear from you. So I have the chat window started, and as we go along, I'll pause periodically so we can share our experiences. So let's get going. All right, let me know when you can see the next screen. I think that should be the next one. So today's talk will focus on life transitions. So people have a lot of different ways or reasons to relocate, and we'll touch on some of those. And then we'll jump right into some of the myths and realities that we have experienced as we help people move. We'll cover some toolbox and questions for you so you can, resources for you so you can have something to walk away with, and then we'll have a question and answer period at the end.
So Zoe, before you move on, I'm getting from our guests that they're having a little trouble hearing. I'm wondering if you might be able to turn your sound up a bit. I've turned it up on my end.
Okay, let me see if I can do that here. I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute and see what my sound is doing. Okay, audio, microphone. It says it's pretty high.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've got mine up as high. Brian is saying that he hears fine, so hopefully it's just an individual issue. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem. I will try to talk louder, speak loudly. Okay, so let's go back to our slide. This is the one we just covered. So the idea is we will converse and chat as we go. All right, next. This was kind of a level setting. And what I wanted to talk about here is that our experience of aging is quite different than that of our parents. Research has been done that shows that our life stages, if you want to call them that, whether it's having children or having our midlife crisis or even retirement, is shifting over time. Typically, things that we used to do in our 20s, we're now doing in our 30s. And 30s are 40s. And you must have heard the term, 60 is the new 50 or 50 is the new 40. That's very true because we are actually younger for longer. Our life expectancy has extended, and because of that, we are experiencing a more active and more healthy life than our parents may have. Of course, there is a large group of people called the boomers who were born just after the Second World War in through the early 60s, who are changing the face of aging as we know it. Because they are such a large population, they have influence to change every aspect of seniors' lives, whether it's senior care or in-home care, whether it's the residences themselves, whether it's the ability to be perceived as still a productive and active member of society. So I want to now switch to chat and see what your experience has been of aging changing compared to your parents. Now I'm going to try and switch windows, so I hope I don't lose you guys. If I go like this, or do I need to stop sharing? I'm going to explore as we go here. Everyone says they are hearing me. That's wonderful. So maybe if you have a minute, can you see the chat window, everybody?
Not yet, no. Is what you're presenting on your desktop for your screen share?
Ah, okay. Here we go. Okay. New share. And I'm back to my slide, aren't I? Well, if everybody can see the chat, I'm just going to go over there and we'll see what's going on. Does that make sense? Oh, I see. Somebody said attendees need to open their chat. So does everybody know where your chat is? If you hover over top of the Zoom window at the bottom, you'll see a little bubble with the word chat beside it.
Yes.
Okay.
And are you showing us something in chat?
I was going to see what people had to say about how their aging experience changed, but I don't see much in here. So I'm going to keep going, and feel free to add or your thoughts as you go along. I will be checking that chat window as we go. All right. Can everybody see my slide now?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
And if you like, I can help by letting you know when questions have popped up here, if you'd like to take them as we go along.
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, and Maureen, while you're getting your slide up there, Maureen said her mother died relatively young, but her father became unable to live on his own, and they were forced to move him into an assisted living.
Yes. So this is a common theme as well, is bereavement causes people to be forced to relocate, and sometimes illness as well. And we do see that very often. So I hear you, Maureen, that is different. And I feel that our parents experienced that younger than we might do so. Part of the demographics, if you will, of boomers is that we are a sandwich generation. So we have living and aged parents, as well as children and grandchildren, and sometimes even great grandchildren coming along. So it's very different than it used to be. So let's move on then. So why might people relocate? Well, obviously there are a number of different life transitions that cause relocation. Major events in your life that causes either a shift in how you think, act, or how you are. And it happens at different times. There's not a prescribed order of these things. Some of them may result in a relocation, others may not. So if you think about retirement itself, that in itself may not cause you to want to move homes, but as your children grow up and move out, you may realize that your home of 20 or 30 years is just a little too big, and you don't need such a large home. One of our clients is in that situation currently, and realizing that her house is a little too big for what she needs and what she will enjoy now. In addition, as you retire, we all have ideas of what retirement is going to be like. But after we retire, the realization of that life is sometimes different than we expected. So we realize, I don't want to live in this neighborhood anymore. I want to move into one where I can walk to the grocery store, or I want to, maybe it's the opposite. I don't want to live in a busy area. I want to move somewhere more quiet. So those kinds of lifestyle choices will often also trigger a relocation. And as we touched on, illness or bereavement will often result in people deciding that their current home no longer suits their requirements, whether it's feelings of grief at having lost a spouse, or illness making mobility issues more important, and realizing that the stairs are no longer navigable. Any number of different scenarios can result in a relocation. One of the common ones that we hear about is income reduction, and Statistics Canada says we will experience a reduction of somewhere between 30 to 50% typically when we retire. So that is not a small amount, and that often is a bit of a stress and impetus, if you will, a reason that drives people to move. Even if you have a home that's already paid off, the mortgage is finished, there is the ongoing cost of maintaining that home. And people find that on a reduced income, with increasing services prices and the constant upkeep, that it just becomes a little too much, and they decide they want to relocate. And another big driver is location of their family. So if you're children with aging parents who are in a different city, or your parents with children who are in a different city, both of those can cause you to decide to relocate. One of our clients decided that her children and grandchildren were actually in Vancouver, and she just didn't want to live so far away where she couldn't visit them or couldn't see her grandchildren growing up. And so that was a really profound or important reason to move. And so she can enjoy her sunset years in close proximity with her family. I know that people often say, we hear people saying, well, I don't know why that person moved, like all their friends are in this neighborhood. But the truth is that friends can be a huge help and a huge support, but children and family are often the ones that are faced with our care as we age, or even just being advocates or caregivers or helpers as we move along. So let's pop over to the chat a little bit, and I'd like to find out which of these transition stages are active in your life today. And maybe I'll just pause and Colleen, if anyone is interested in sharing their thoughts, maybe just help me by.
Absolutely. If you would like to respond to Zoe's question about how any of those situations might have be affecting you. Maureen is saying, I'm really torn about how to decide if and when I should move. I'm a pre-boomer and still active and healthy, but don't want to be in a position of having to move.
Yes.
Barb has suggested that, I feel the same way that you do, Barb. My kids have already told me that, they don't want what I have. So as she's saying, whatever she's accumulated, that the children will not want. So she's at the point in her life that she's trying to cull out things. So I understand.
Very true.
Lena, income reduction has affected her, her decision making, and VC, retirement, income reduction, family location, all are affecting her. Maureen, she's a widow and her house is probably too big for her. So it's time for her to think about a change.
So clearly, I mean, even among us, we're experiencing all of these things, and they're so important in helping us decide when is that right time. So I'm going to jump now, and thank you so much. I really appreciate it when people share and we have a conversation instead of me just sitting here chatting, talking. So I'm going to jump into the first myth. And we hear this amongst our own friends and family, as well as initial calls that we get scoping out what options people have that say, I do have lots of time. And I think somebody just mentioned, I'm still young, I'm still fit, and I don't really think I need to do it yet. And the reality is, of course, we have lots of time. And unfortunately, what we can't do is predict how much we have. And so, yes, you do have lots of time until suddenly you don't. And obviously, when we first retire, we're still young and healthy, and the first 10 years are generally the healthiest that people experience, and they don't feel like they need to be prepared for any illness or bereavement or any major transitions. But I'd love to wish on everyone that we have a long and healthy old age, and we die in our sleep in our own bed in our own home that we've lived in for 50 years. Reality is that that's not always the case, and people find that either a sudden illness or living in retirement is different. And one of our clients did stay in his home for many years. His wife passed away eventually, and he still stayed there. And eventually, though, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and his mobility began to decline. So the healthcare services folks are really keen on helping people stay in their homes, because people are just healthier and happier when they're in a familiar surrounded by their loved possessions and with the routines and habits that they've built up over so many years. But this particular gentleman realized that his mobility was going to increasingly decline. So he did start planning and realized in good time that he needed to move. So we helped him move in, as it turned out, with his daughter. She renovated a suite and was able to share her living space, which that is always not always the case, but where feasible, that's a great way to transition comfortably surrounded by your loved ones. Where it's not feasible, people often choose some sort of supported living to move into. But the short story is really that the Girl Guides have it right. Be prepared is a great motto. You can't predict when your life is going to change. And it's really important to decide what is important to you and what do you want to keep or give ahead of time. And most importantly, it's always easier to move before you're forced into it. So the chat question for this would be, how long do you think you have? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but for those people that are still young and healthy, you might say 10 years. Or maybe you're a little bit older and you're thinking, I'm kind of in the 5 to 7 year range. So just curious point of point of conversation. I'm just approaching my, you know, at risk of revealing my age, but I'm approaching my 60s. And so I think, you know, oh, I've got 10 years. So I'm firmly in this myth number one, where I think I have lots of time.
Leslie has popped in here previously, and she said that no change is needed for many years and probably be health related when it does come time to move. So I think in some regard, you know, it may all be precipitated on, like, as you say, you think you have lots of time, and then all of a sudden, suddenly you're ill, and you need to make that decision. Brian has suggested that wait lists for assisted housing can complicate timing.
Very true. So those wait lists are very long.
And Maureen has suggested she's 76, so she feels that she probably has 3 or 4 more years. So, and we will hope that for you, Maureen.
Indeed, we do. Yes. All right. Thank you.
Yes, and God bless our daughters that think that they.
So true.
Your daughter's looking out for your well-being, but sometimes you know, you're happier just making your own decision.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That's lovely. Let's keep going. Myth number 2. So this one is, I'll deal with it when it happens. And again, it's a little bit of a variation on the, you know, I have lots of time, but the thought behind this one we found is that people think that they are, and they are, capable, healthy, logical, rational. And when a crisis or a change happens to me, I'll take care of it. Like I've always taken care of my life all these years. And if it happens gradually, I would say, yes, absolutely, you'll be able to deal with it. But if it happens suddenly, you will lose your mind. And it's only partially joking here. What I'm trying to get at is, in crisis, our brains change. We fall into survival mode. I'm sure you've heard of some of this, where our reasoning ability is reduced significantly, and we kind of fall into I just have to put out today's fire, and I don't have energy to think about what's going to happen tomorrow. And especially when we're dealing with illness or chronic pain, these kinds of things can erode your energy to the point where literally you can no longer think clearly. So what can you do for these kinds of situations is really, again, you know, Girl Guides, start thinking about how you're going to approach an illness or how you're going to approach a relocation. So set up your social supports, chat with your relations, whether that's children, whether it's a church group. It doesn't have to be family. It can be other social supports that you have. The most important thing is to identify what you have as social support and who can you call on. And then the legal aspect, the second bullet really talks about, if you have possessions that are dear to you or have high value and you want to make sure they go to a certain person, ensure you put them into a will, because the last thing we have, you know, that we see that we are grieved to have to deal with is family members either fighting about things or ending up just disposing of things that were so precious to their parents. And I mean, we totally get it. Many things that were important to our parents aren't that important to us. As somebody mentioned, you know, none of our children want our China sets anymore. And as relocation specialists, we find it very difficult to even sell things like dining suites. So I don't know about you guys, but earlier years when you got married, it was one of those prized possessions where you would have a dining suite with a nice buffet where you could put your china. Well, we cannot sell those for love or money these days. So
no, I understand that one. It seems like the younger generation, they want new, and they're not interested in china or silver or, you know, any of those fine dining things. You know, it's the way that they entertain is completely different these days.
It is very true. So obviously, you know, that's something that was part of our lives, talking about how aging is changing.
Yes.
It's really about how the next generation is experiencing it as well. So, and then the last part we wanted to share with you is, if possible, and you have possessions that your children do want, then think about bequeathing them while you still can while you are living and capable, and your children can enjoy them, and you can enjoy your children enjoying them as much. So where these are feasible actions, that might be something to think about. Mm-hmm. So let's chat a little bit about, have you thought of or done any of these actions to prepare for your next transition?
One of the things that personally has concerned me is the fact that I seem to have designated myself keeper of history. And so I have, dishware that was my grandmother's, my great-grandmother's, things that are very precious to me because, they were passed down from generations of women that, my daughter and grandchildren don't seem to have much interest in. So, trying to cull out pieces that are particular interest or that I feel that are, something that I particularly want to see carry on, and then trying to give to them now, or at least set them aside so that they have them when the time is right, that I know that they're going to take care of them. But other than that, it worries me that this is the end of the line for some of those past generations that I feel that I've been responsible for, keeping their memory alive.
So true. And the sad part, or maybe the ironic part a little bit, is that when our children are in their 20s or 30s, they don't have that perspective that maybe arises in their 40s and 50s. And the decisions need to be made now, and they don't really want that stuff. But 10 or 20 years later, they might realize that they have lost something by not keeping that. And it's a very difficult time.
Absolutely. They don't understand the value just yet of keeping connection with those roots. But Brian, a question: what percentage of your clients make their own decisions versus their kids making the decisions?
So thanks, Brian. It's a bit of a loaded question, because partially our business comes from estates. So the people have passed away, and in essence, their children are now dealing with dispersal of that estate. So it's the executor and the children that make those decisions. The kind of people that we have that are actually relocating due to illness or due to lifestyle choices, they're more able to make those decisions themselves. So it's a bit of a mix.
And lastly, I have, but find that what I will bother bequeathing changes, and changing the will is bothersome. Like you said, the generation may not want it. So, and Maureen, she's talked to her daughters and grandsons, but so much of what she has is of no interest to them. It's not valuable, but,
Yes, I hear you.
I guess the only thing we can do is hang on to what is significantly precious to us, and then hopefully at some point they will find value in it.
Yes. Yeah, it's not an easy decision. So again, let's keep going. And I think what I'd like to talk about in a couple of minutes is really deciding on what is important to you. So let's go to the next slide here. Hopefully I'm not clicking randomly. There we go. It's supposed to say myth number 3, so apologize for my math. Never a strong suit. So the next myth, let's just call it the next myth. It's too expensive. And we do hear this often because of the items I spoke about earlier, which is we're faced with a reduced income, we're faced with a fixed income. And we often feel, well, I better just stay where I am and eke it out, because moving is very expensive and it's not going to be worth it. Reality is that, yes, moving is expensive, no doubt, but you will be surprised if you were one of the people that bought houses in the 60s and 70s. You will be stunned at what they're worth today. And the fact is, there is something out there for everybody. What we need to do is start early enough that you're able to find it before you're forced to find it. So what you can do is start early. Look at what makes sense for you with your income, with your lifestyle. Exploring costs nothing. People are very happy, especially if you're thinking of moving into supported living or into a small condo or into a rental apartment. It's very easy to just go out and look. It doesn't cost you anything, and people that are renting are happy to show you because you're a prospective client. So it's much easier psychologically and emotionally to have a toolbox full of alternatives to say, you know what, we thought we might want to go into a condo, but then we looked at all these different condos and some of those monthly fees are just too much. Or now we're thinking maybe not an apartment condo, maybe a townhouse condo. So making those decisions early really helps clarify your thought processes. So that you're not, again, so that you're not in crisis, being forced to make a decision that affects, frankly, you know, a huge amount of your cash, as well as your life and your lifestyle. Another great source is to talk to people that you know. You'll see that people will have had their own struggles, as we shared earlier in our own talk today, that we are all at different stages. We've experienced all kinds of different things, and people find different solutions. One of our clients had a home, long-term home, again, mortgage was paid off, and she was a widow. Her husband did not have a pension. She did not have a pension. So she was, you know, very strapped for cash. And she had to find a place to live that didn't require her to maintain the upkeep of her home. And so what she ended up doing was she did sell her home for a very tidy amount, but she used that to enter a cooperative housing. And so what that is it gives you a private living space, but you also share in the kitchen, you share in the living spaces, and the grounds and the house itself are taken care of. So it's semi-independent, if you want to call it that. But it also has a built-in community. I'm a huge advocate for cooperative housing because you have a broad range of ages, you have that social input, and the communal living aspect really creates a social venue, if you will, that a lot of people as we age, we find are at least I'm finding that my life is becoming, you know, kind of my social circle is decreasing as life goes on. People pass away. So it allows you to stay connected, if you will. And also there are a lot of social services available to you if you are faced with a restricted income and you need to move. So we're happy to chat and explore your requirements at any time, of course. Chatting is free. So our chat question right now is, are some of these feasible for you? Have you done some of these actions around talking to people, gathering information? What might be some things that you could think of?
Lisa has mentioned here that your point about using social services, that she agrees that that's a great resource for people. Maureen is saying that she spent quite a bit of time looking online at apartment condos for sale. I know that I can find something less than what I can get for my current house. They sell first, then buy is a bit of a guessing game. And Brian is asking, you mentioned about a co-op in Calgary. Do you know where that is located?
There are a couple. And forgive me, menopause brain, I cannot remember their names right now. There's one in the Southwest, and there's one just up Edmonton Trail that used to be there for many years. So there's two that I know for sure. One is toward Richmond Road area, and I'm sure there's others. I just don't have it at my fingertips, but if you would like, at the end, we have our contact information. So I would happily share that afterward with you.
Sure, absolutely. I would suggest that Brian reach out. And also, I just want to remind that if anyone would like to ask their question and respond to these questions in person, if you raise hand, I can try to have you unmute. In the meantime, Jenny, thank you, Jenny. This is why these sessions Kerby Centre hosts are a great way to learn about what is out there to consider. This week's sessions plus past sessions have been excellent for exploring aging options, or at least be aware of available services out there in Calgary. Thank you, Jenny. That's very nice, nice comment for you. And I'll make sure that I pass that on. And for any of you that this might be your first time with us, all of our previous presentations, or the majority of our previous presentations, are on our Kerby Centre YouTube channel. So if you would like some of the information Jenny has referred to, you can visit there and subscribe and view those videos. But Maureen has suggested that there is a co-op, I guess, in Bowness that's just starting. And Lena, thank you very much for agreeing. I'm glad that you're finding these valuable for you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. Okay, let's keep going. I have 3 more minutes, and I am aware of the time. We're just at 11:30, so hopefully we'll stay well within our time, and we'll have an opportunity.
Oh, we seem to be doing our Q&A as we go along, so that.
Good point. Okay, I love it. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, number 3, I don't need help. This one is really interesting to us because clients will phone us and say, well, I don't really need help, but I just want to find out X, Y, Z. And it turns out they actually do need help. It's, I think, partially maybe our society that really values independence and doing it on our own and you know, our dignity. And I think, yes, obviously, I really am a huge advocate of doing things on your own, especially as we age. I know as my mother was aging, she would find that her mobility was getting restricted and she'd have difficulty reaching up to the higher shelf to get things. And she'd always ask us kids, like, can you reach that down for me? And I'm like, Mom, your arm can reach up. You can do this. And you know, as a younger person, it's really easy to me to be kind of indignant about it. But it's the converse of the I don't need help portion, is that we really value our independence until suddenly we can't. And even trying to do everything on our own has a price to pay. So we have limited energy, and deciding what we want to do ourselves and what we need to have help with is a really important decision, if you will, that needs to be made. So moving is a huge job. When we think about helping people move, if you think about a typical 3-bedroom bungalow built in the 60s/70s, it takes us about 30 to 40 hours of coordinating and sorting, and another 20 to 30 hours of labor to empty a typical 3-bedroom bungalow. And that is not a small job. So do you want to spend time doing that? Well, you could, absolutely, if you have time and if you have the energy to do it. But that's just something to think about. So one of our clients was a woman with a full career, had an empty nest, so her children had left home, and she realized that her house was just too big. So she recognized that fairly early and started to look around. But when she thought about having to move out of her house, she just felt overwhelmed and stopped. She just couldn't. She just became paralyzed, in a sense, if you will. And she knew what she wanted to do as her destination. She her son had a duplex that she could rent, and she wanted to move in there, but she just could not get moving because the feeling of overwhelm. So, you know, one of the things that we can help with is going through those thoughts and feelings with you and deciding you can do it step by step. And we do it step by step and sorting as you go and ensuring that the things you want to keep are actually ones that you can fit into your new home. Recognizing that typically people move into smaller homes when they move. So you really can't fit everything into your new home. So exploring those help options, deciding where you want to spend your time, and again, dare I say it, starting early. So if you think about your own experience and your own situation, do you have help available to help with your own transition? And again, I'm going to plug Kerby Centre here because they are a great resource. And I know we steer our clients to you guys, Colleen, very frequently. They have all kinds of help available.
Yes.
And as well, as we mentioned earlier, there's social services, your friends and family, even residence communities. So if you're thinking of moving into a residence community, they will often have resources available to help you get moved in. Now, often we find that those are just movers. They're not really the kind of people that'll help you sort through your possessions, but
yes,
yeah, they have those as well.
Yeah, Brian has said, thank God for loving daughters. And Brian, I concur with you. I can identify with that one completely because I went through a move myself last fall. And, even though I was in I had already downsized to a condo and I was kind of upsizing a little bit, but even at that, it's like, what do I get rid of? What do I take? Well, you don't need to hire movers. We're going to move you. All my friends well, I don't need help. I don't want to be a bother. So that one resonates with me. Mom, we're here to help. So Brian, I appreciate your sentiment. Thank God for loving daughters. And Maureen says she knows her family will help her as well as when the time comes. So, but there are times when we don't want to have to put that burden on our children. So, it's great to be able to have a resource like yours that, and sometimes I think, we are so independent that we don't want to feel weak and helpless, to our children. So it, to me, often I'd rather pay someone to come and do it than to admit to my children I'm helpless.
And that ties, I'm going to use that as a segue to my next myth, because that ties very well into our myth. And that is, my family will help me, and bless them, as we have all said, of course they will help. And what we find is that children, of course, assuming that our family dynamic is positive and constructive, are very concerned and loving and supportive, and they want to help. But the facts of life are, they have a life. They are sometimes working full time. Sometimes they're in a different city. Sometimes they just can't drop everything, even if it's, every weekend, to come and help us pack to move. And bless their hearts, of course they would do it, but they have their own goals and needs and stage of life as well that they are struggling with. Mm-hmm. So our recommendation is, really decide what's important and think about how much space you need. But if you can, talk to your children earlier rather than later. And it's always better to have a plan that you're executing rather than a crisis that everybody's trying to deal with, all hands on deck kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think we mentioned this earlier, about what is important. Something that you might think is important is or may not be as important to your children. And we touched on this, right? Like our China, we had a client who had a century-old piano that she remembered her great grandmother playing, and she has all these memories attached to that piano, but now she could not take it with her. And she was, well, what can I do with this piano? And so we gave her some advice around options to, try to consign it or sell it. But the fact is, pianos are very difficult to sell.
Yes.
So, yeah. However, if you play the piano every day, I would say we will move your piano for you. If it's something that gives you joy, take it with you by all means. Sacrifice a couch instead. Keep your piano. So
yeah, absolutely. Whatever's going to make them more comfortable in their own new home. Donna is a professional organizer and move specialist who specializes in seniors. It's hard on the senior to have their children help them out. Many say just throw it out without realizing the impact of that comment. And you're so right, Donna. I think of when my sister and I have flown to Ontario more than once to move my mother, and the last time, it broke my heart because downsizing considerably from a large condo to a residence, 1-bedroom residence. And we basically, everything was laid out, and it's like, okay, pick up what you want that has some sentimental value. If it has no sentimental value, it's going to Value Village. And, it breaks my heart to think of the things that Mom might have wanted to keep, but that we had no recourse, but just to, and we kind of joke a little bit after the fact, that, when Mom asked how things worked out for us, we just had her leave and we did it. And we joked with her, well, Mom, you might not want to go to Value Village for a while.
Oh my goodness.
So it breaks my heart to think that there may have been, but I kept as much of what I thought she would want us to keep, but you don't know. And, I feel bad for her that, her lifelong gatherings have just gone to the wind.
So true. We find that even things like photos, photo albums, photos, keepsakes of various types. People keep their children's school, what are they called? Projects, their little drawings and all that, which are so important to parents. And I know when my mom had kept some of those for us and handed them off, and I looked through them and I was like, oh, these are kind of cute. But I was like, oh, okay, thanks. It was literally not even on my radar at the time. Now I look back and I think, oh, that was so sweet of her to have kept that.
Well, Donna, you're absolutely right. It does. The situations do need to be handled with lots of TLCs. Donna's recommending shadow boxes to put seniors' memories in, to preserve their memories, and taking pictures of things, put them in a coffee table book so that they can look back on them. Those are great ideas. So instead of being hidden away as well, we should probably move on to
the last one. All right, there we go. It won't be as good. And so our last myth is really about that feeling that people have that, you know, I have my life, I'm comfortable, I will never find anything as good as what I have here today. And this doesn't happen often in people who are choosing to move, obviously, because they already have motivations. But this is kind of a response when people are forced to move and they think, you know, it's just going to be horrible. I won't like it. But the fact is, you know, there is opportunity and challenge in moving. It's a two-sided coin. So you may find that there are all kinds of enriching and fulfilling activities, especially if you're going into supported living in a home. There are so many social activities and other benefits now available that were not available. Again, the boomers are really affecting how much service is available in supported living these days. And you may not have even thought of some of the ones that they have. I know there's, of course, this is beyond, and I think it's definitely beyond the vast majority of us, but there are some residences that have bowling alleys in them and movie theaters. And I'm just like agog. I'm amazed to see those kinds of facilities. But again, as time goes on and more services are made available, price will come down. Though the ones I've looked at have been, you know, rather astronomically priced. So if you're the lucky few that can afford that, then that's a lovely way to go. But so what can you do here is really define the resources that you have. What space do you have that you might not be using, and can you either use that differently to create options for yourself, or can you release that and move entirely into a different location? And again, my comment about the piano, what is it that gives you quality of life? So if you're looking at relocating, if it is something that perhaps you love to do crafts, perhaps you sing, perhaps, you know, whatever that is. I knew this one woman who she used to take old china. So speaking of old china, she would take old china and she'd bash it up. And then she'd make lovely little mosaics. So she'd like make a little mosaic table. And when she wanted to move, obviously she wanted to take all that with her. And that's perfectly sensible because we want to have quality of life in our new location. So one of the other things I was going to mention, and Donna, thank you so much for contributing. I know that your skill set is highly needed. One of the things that we've found often helps people with sorting through their things is finding other ways to remember them. And I know that you said, you know, take a picture, but one of the things that we will often say, you know, if you have had a beloved pet that you now are not allowed to have pets in your new home, and the pet's since passed away, take a photograph. And it's not that expensive to actually get it put onto a piece of canvas so that they take these photographs and make them look like little picture paintings. And it's a lovely piece of art, and you can have fond memories of your pet in your new residence as well. So again, looking for creative solutions. What is the highest quality of life that you want, and how can you keep that in your new residence? So maybe a little bit of sharing on what would be those things that give you the greatest joy that you would want to keep with you.
And while people are popping their questions in there, I think Brian had provided a link to some co-ops. Again, if in the chat box there, if you were interested in that information, he's provided you some links. So thank you, Brian. And Donna says, thank you very much for that idea as well, Zoe. And anyone else, any further input as to what you would find? I know we've had some presentations this week as well from some lovely residents, organizations, communities here in Calgary. And when you look at them and you hear of all the amenities and you know, meals served, and as you say, movies and activities and you know, that kind of thing, all right within your own home, it does sound very appealing. As I look out into my yard that needs a whole lot of yard work this summer. You know, so just having some of those amenities does seem very appealing, and there's a wide variety, you know, in speaking with them, there's a wide variety of options to suit everyone's needs. So, and Elena says, having a pet, how many places are available for pets? I guess that would be dependent.
It would, and for people who have pets, we do actually research that for them. I know there's a couple, I think Huntington, for assisted living, I mean, so I think Huntington allows one pet. the manor at Huntington, I mean. There's a couple of others, but they're not common.
Yeah, or they're just checking with the various resources. All right, anyone else, any input? Okay, go ahead, Zoe.
Okay, I was just going to say, I'm going to keep going because, you know, we are running a little short on time.
Yeah.
So the toolbox here talks a little bit about the whole, again, and I probably sounding a little like a broken record, though they may not even call it that anymore. Records don't exist, right? Oh my goodness. So thinking ahead is one of the biggest things you can do for preparation. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? What kind of life do you want? And then sharing those wishes with your family and whatever social systems you have so that you can start that ball rolling earlier. Acting, so planning, of course, for your life transitions and having more than one plan. So, of course, we want our happy plan, right? Where everything goes swimmingly and nothing goes wrong, but we should always have a plan as well for things that might go wrong. So what happens if I get ill? What happens if I have a terminal illness? What happens if my spouse passes? Those kinds of things are a little bit, you know, may feel a little bit morbid, but nevertheless, they will help you when the time comes. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm going to say this anyway, put your legal paperwork in place. It will be immensely helpful for you as well as your family as we progress through our aging years. Pardon me, my voice is going here. All right, getting ready. So we're getting ready for your next, you know, relocation. Try to keep your current residence in repair. There's always an impact on housing prices if you're thinking of if you're in a home and trying to sell. Reducing your possessions. We've talked about that. Be snoopy. I can't say that enough. You know, just go look. If there's an open house in an area you want to move into, or there's a residence that's doing an open house or doing tours, go ahead, go have a look. More information is always a good thing. And we had a last minute chat. Let me just see if I have one last slide. Oh, it's just the resources. So call us, obviously, we're here to help. I put in a couple of links there for that stress syndrome I mentioned, as well as a little article in Psychology Today. And then our contact information is there, and always call Kirby. Call Kirby, yay.
Well, and again, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. I just said that's my last slide. I was just going to move to.
I was going to say, and so that if anyone would like those resources, we will have the video up for you that you can revisit this, or by all means reach out to either Zoe or myself, and we'll make sure that you have the connections to the links, those links to those resources. And I thank you very much for joining us today, Zoe. That was great information, and I think that provides an awful lot of help and insight for people that are considering whether imminent or in the future a move, to have a better understanding of what they might be facing. Maureen says great information. She wanted to know, how do you charge for your service?
Well, we do give a quote. So we come and we consult with you. We decide what you would like to have done, and then we provide a quote. And it's based on the number of different things that are involved in your particular relocation. And you can choose. It's like a menu. You can say, you know what, I think I can handle this by myself. I would need help with that. So it's a very open conversation.
Yeah, I suggest reaching out directly to Zoe, Maureen, and I'm sure she'll be happy to provide you with that information. And so great to connect. And again, we appreciate you all joining us and look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you so much.